All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you have never checked out the program before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary podcast. Today, we have an interview for you. And like with so many of our interviews, it's an author interview. With me on the studio line is ShamanIsis. Shaman, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Billy. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, it's always great to have you. Now, some of you, if you listen to the program regularly, you know that Shaman and I do these commentary programs. It's quite common for me to have a co-host and talk about current events and things like that. But today, we are talking about her book, and the book is titled Memory Mansion. And from what I hear, you're like in the Hot 100. Is that right? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I was very excited to see that it's already, a bestseller, and it hasn't even come out yet. So I'm excited.
Well, there you go. I mean, if you can, and these days, if you can hit the charts in pre-sales, which I'm guessing is what this was, that's pretty impressive. So wow. Okay, well that's great. We're going to talk about that book. We're going to talk about her writing process, and let's talk about the book just because I know it's autobiographical to a degree. But is it written as that, or is it written in novel form? I'm kind of unclear about that.
Yeah, it's written like a diary kept over years. It flashes back and forward between decades, but it's my true life, real story, written like a thriller because it was a thrill to actually experience.
All right. Well, let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk about your early days. Where was your childhood spent?
My childhood was spent in Memphis, Tennessee. I was raised in St. Peter's Orphanage and in foster care for most of my formative years. I spent a very little time living with my family when I was like 12.
Okay.
So,
Is there a reason for that? Or how exactly did you end up in that situation?
well, I'm a Gen Xer, and the world was just a different place back then. My mother and father's relationship fell apart after he had a horrific accident on the Autobahn in Germany. And when we got to the States, he eventually just went off on a very long binge that eventually led to his death. And my mother was left with three daughters and no education and no support. And so she put us in St. Peter's to keep us from having to live in our car. And I
Okay.
remember it quite well. So I've known, unlike a lot of kids who grew up in an orphanage, I knew my mother and had a
Okay.
lot of understanding and sympathy for the situation she was put in. It did lead to some adventures.
Okay. And that's kind of where the book comes in. So you're in an orphanage. How many years were you there?
Most of the years before I was preteen.
Okay. So how did that evolve? How did that evolve to the next step in your life? What happened?
Well, I lived in the orphanage, and then my mother took us in, and uh, that didn't last long. My sister got pregnant, and I was getting into a crap ton of trouble because I was a I was a rebel.
Oh,
And
okay.
I ended up getting into this newspaper making car accident and then getting sent to juvenile. It was a prison. It was called the Memphis jail for juveniles, but it was a prison. And after that, I was adopted by my foster family, who I had known throughout the years I was in the orphanage because they would take us home regularly. And I moved in with them in high school, and he was part of a ring of very bad men that I spent a long time running from. But that was kind of the transition there, and eventually I ran from Tennessee.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and play the trailer of the book, and it kind of gives a synopsis, I should say, of the story and where it's going to go next. So let me go ahead and run that, and then we'll come back. It's only about a minute long. Here we go.
A terrifying voice message said, "Cindy, you asked me to call if anyone ever came looking for you. Now might be a good time to get lost." Shit. She thought she was being followed again. This was confirmation. She was going to have to run again. Oh, this time she got help from the FBI. She had grown up in an orphanage, and foster care and a human trafficking ring had made her childhood terrifying. She had been running for years. This time, she was running for New York City. She could hide her shame and secrets behind success, right? Only, eventually, that led to isolation, depression, and years of pretending to be someone else. A recipe for a lifetime of misery. Decades later, exhausted from the shame and secrets, she finally broke. This is the story of how she finally learned self-love. This is how you glow the fuck up. Memory Mansion on pre-order now.
You did a real good, I would say, acting job, with that voiceover. Really well done.
Thank you. I was really happy with it. It was my first time doing something like that, but I enjoyed the process, and the AI art's fun.
Sure. So going by you alluded to this family being around some very bad men. And the clip we just ran talks about trafficking. Did you want to maybe give the audience a clue as to how the book covers this aspect of it?
Yeah, when I was young, there was a group of men who were trafficking young girls, and my foster father was a part of that. And sadly, he actually basically ruined my sister's life. Him and the men did. She ended up becoming a prostitute and eventually dying from that. And the way that I handled it was to run. And I ran first to California, and they found me there. So I ran to New York, and I changed my name again. And I just disappeared into the city at a time when you could actually do something like that. It was the 90s. And there was no social media, and I disappeared into the city and decided I was going to become a success, and that would fix my whole life, and that's what I did.
Interesting. I just decided I was going to become a success. I've been trying to decide that for a long time, and I haven't had any trauma. How exactly do you do that? How do you decide? Well, you know what? I'll just get successful, and that'll take care of a lot of my problems. But I'll tell you what, that's a great way to go. I mean, that's a lot better than taking a downward spiral. So I got to admit that's an optimistic way to hide yourself in the midst of success. But did it come that easy for you?
I worked really hard. When I got to New York City, I didn't have an education. I had a heavy Southern accent. I didn't know anybody. And I just worked really hard. I found the right job. Like, I looked for it when I first got there. I was like, I just need to be in a job where they will allow me to create my own success. And he was a very, very successful eyewear designer, and really the creator of the fancy boutique eyewear stores that we see everywhere now. And his celebrity following was of such a level that within a couple of years, I was doing interviews, and I was dressing like I did the cast of The Sopranos, their eyewear, which it was in all of the posters and campaigns for Sopranos when it first came out. And Sex in the City, I just fell into this amazing career, but it was due to hard work. And eventually I got support from people in being able to be successful, even without a degree.
My understanding, as well as I've known you, is that you've been into public relations and marketing. That's kind of where your background is. Is there a reason that you gravitated to that? Were you just good at communicating, or what drew you to those fields?
Honestly, when I got to New York City, I got there at a time when the internet was first coming on, and Google didn't even exist yet. And I could see that PR was going to be a massive tool for being able to create brand success without a big budget. And I got to be able to get a taste of that, and got my first job working in PR. And I was just really naturally good at it. I was a naturally good communicator, and I was a futurist. So I was seeing where things were going and laying down particular ways of doing things would eventually lead to industry. So I created influencer marketing going back like 20 years ago, and it grew into being a beast. And that was all because PR became magic at that time. Media had changed, and you could take an unknown brand and create a cultural moment with it. It was an exciting time to work in the industry.
Yeah, yes, I was, doing work similarly in the '90s as well. Mine was mostly radio and music and things like that. Not so much directly related to like a marketing firm. We're doing it for as contract work. But a similar time, the '90s were actually a very exciting time as the internet was developing and all of these other things. Now, I take it the book has been written since it's been a diary. This is something you've been working on essentially your whole life, right?
Yeah, my mother and I discussed me writing our story before she passed away unexpectedly, and so I've been sort of writing it. For years, and I finally sat down after I finally, I should mention that, I did become really successful in the city, but it didn't lead to happiness at all. And it wasn't until I finally gave up everything and basically lost everything through just self-destructive behavior that I was finally able to learn to love myself and to learn to love my story, which I had never shared with anybody. So I was sort of secretly writing this story that I had never told anybody about, being on the run for decades and never using my real name. And when I finally sat down to write it last year, I had healed a lot. So the story really poured out, and it was a beautiful healing experience for me because I really wanted other people who dealt with shame and secrets to understand that you can live a completely different life experience. So yeah, it was great.
So you took the individual notes from the diary and you tied them all together somehow. I'm guessing is how you did it.
Yeah, I had been writing it I lived it, and I had been writing it in my head for a while, and I just sat down one day and started pouring my heart out onto the page, and it just came to life. And when I realized it sounded like a thriller, I was like, "Wow, this is actually pretty cool."
Yeah. When you talked about it with your mother, there was something that you made a decision that I'm going to do this. What was the catalyst for that?
I didn't realize that I was angry about a lot of the things that had happened to the women in my family. The patriarchy system, particularly in the '70s, was pretty horrific. And when she and I talked about it, it was really more of a vengeful thing. Like I was going to get revenge on the people who had, hurt the women of my family and abused them in so many ways. And thank God I didn't write the book until I had actually had a life change and a perspective change. And so this is definitely not the vengeful book. It's just more of an opportunity for other people to see their lives with fresh new eyes.
I know you well enough to know that there was some sort of I don't know, maybe this isn't the right term, but kind of like a spiritual awakening that kind of changed your attitude. Is that in the book? And you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. The book really shares the adventures of my life, but it really wraps in how I learned to love myself. So in 2019, I had failed in my career. I couldn't get a fashion line, a sustainable fashion line off the ground and launched. And I knew that we were going to be closing. I just knew it intuitively. People thought I was crazy. It was like, oh my God, no, the country's going to close and I can't get this very expensive project off the ground. And that failure was that thing that finally made me look in the mirror and realize that I had been depressed, secretly depressed for 10 years. I was very overweight and incredibly unhappy, and I didn't know how to be happy. I didn't understand what that was. And in 2019, specifically, one day I woke up and my hair had turned white from the stress. And I
Mm.
stood in front of the mirror and I looked at myself for a very long time and said, you know what? You can't live this way anymore. You have to change. You've got to start, just change one thing at a time. And that took me down the road of a spiritual awakening that really changed my entire life experience.
A lot of people get into that part of their life and they give up. I've heard the story many, many times. How do you change it into this has got to go positively? I got to go up from here. Um, so many people have been in that exact place. I'm just kind of wondering how that worked for you.
You know what? I was so sick and tired of being miserable, and I was tired of the secrets. The secrets were just weighing me down. Like I was exhausted from being the person who never used her real name, of never telling my real story, of being ashamed of the mistakes that I'd made. Because I started out running from a human trafficking ring, but eventually I was running from my own secrets and the mistakes that I made. And I think when we get into enough pain, that's when we decide to change. Because if you're not there where you're ready to change, then you probably haven't gotten to the place of enough pain.
Yeah.
Is that I think that for the people that I know that are ready to change their lives, it's because they finally reached the point where they can't do it anymore.
Yeah, the threshold has been reached. What do you hope that the reader gets when somebody reads this book? There's an entertainment value to a lot of books, but sometimes the author hopes that there's some sort of, I don't want to say a message, but there's a lesson in terms of human resilience. How do you craft that? What is the feeling when somebody finishes this book? What do you hope that what they hope have taken from it? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, first of all, I want them to realize that life is an adventure, even in the places when you're in a lot of pain. But the real lesson of the book is that our secrets and our shame keep us sick, and that if you want to have a life that you actually enjoy, you can create a reality that you love. And what by that I don't mean engineering a reality using media and personal opinions. I mean our um our thought habits create our life experience. Our thought habits are at the root of the mood that we get in. So our thought habits create our mental state. Our mental state creates our emotional state. That's energy and motion. That's the way we feel. That's our mood. And that becomes our life experience. The lesson of the book is that by choosing healthy thought habits and practicing them, you begin to create a reality, an emotion, and a life experience that you really enjoy. So you got to learn to replace the unhealthy thought habits with quality thoughts, and then you become in command of your reality, your life experience, and that really is ultimately the lesson of the book.
I've been around a lot of people who have shared their recovery journey, and of course that's a little different. But the one thing that they do say about being on the right path is people, places, and things. Now, if you're around the same people, you're going to be doing the same things in the same places. How important is your crowd? How important is it to have people around you that are on a positive path?
Yeah, the people, places, and things that you have around you are like the content that you consume. You become like what you surround yourself with. So if you are choosing people, places, and things that have bad energy, that have an unhealthy quality to them, you will pick up on that. It's almost impossible to be submersed in an environment or around people and not be affected by the way that they behave. So if we're creating our reality with our thought habits, people, places, and things, it's very much falls within those thought habits. You keep picking unhealthy, and that's what you're going to keep getting. So yeah, hugely important. And when I had my spiritual awakening, I had to change everything, like everything.
Yeah.
I had to change my career, the people I was around, where I lived. I needed to change everything, and that's what it took to change and become a happy person.
Yeah. Being happy is not always easy, is it? I mean, it seems
Yeah.
like you really went through a lot to learn the things that you learned.
Oh yeah, I
And
was stubborn. Oh Billy, I was so stubborn. Yeah, I had to get really, really miserable to change those. We become so attached to our unhealthy thought habits that we're scared to let them go because it's all we know. And I really had to break myself down to learn to become my natural self and to love who that is, warts and all.
yeah, we are talking about the book Memory Mansion and the author ShamanIsis. You incorporate a lot of these certain aspects of what you're talking about into your podcast and some other things that you are producing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and where people can find it and some of the things that you cover? And we probably should mention, I know we're talking about your book today, but you are very much a spiritualist. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Give a little background to yourself as far as the author that you are, because you incorporate a lot of things into who you are.
Yeah, I'm a mindfulness author and speaker. So once I learned how a person could change their life, I had to share that message with other people. I was called to shamanism when I was a teenager, but I was like, nah, I'm not going to be a priest, or that's the way I looked at it. I didn't look at it as a community healer. I looked at it through the eyes of the church because I was raised in the South, where the church is very predominant. But when I experienced my awakening, I was recalled back to helping other people. And so all of the work that I do, my books, I have one book out, Unleash the Empress, which shares the spiritual practices that helped me heal. And then I've got Memory Mansion coming out, which is the self-love memoir that reads like a thriller. And then I've got the work as ShamanIsis as a spiritual guide. And I'm very excited because I've poured everything I've learned into a course called Engineering Joy, the Science of Blissful Living, which is launching this November. And I'm very excited to bring that because it literally is 9 steps that allow people to learn how to be happy. And happiness is a choice. It's a perception choice. It's not that giddy thing that you see in media.
Yeah.
Happiness is really about peace and choosing your perception of your reality.
That's interesting. Happiness is about peace. That's a great line. That is an
and
absolutely.
You can find all of that at ShamanIsis.com.
ShamanIsis.com. The book, we mentioned that it's already selling well in pre-sale, and this podcast is going to be out for a while. So where can people find it once it's readily available? Where can they go to get Memory Mansion by ShamanIsis?
They can go to my website. There's a link there that'll take you to wherever it's sold. Right now it's on Amazon under ebooks, but by February 3rd, it'll be available in audio, print, as well as ebook.
Just out of curiosity, the audiobook, are you producing that? Are you reading it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I get offers every once in a while to do those, and that's a lot of work. Now, it may not be so bad for you because you're familiar with the material.
Yeah.
But, for me to do a read, I would have to read the book several times, and then you have to take it in sections, and you have to read every line perfectly, or you have to do it again, and then it all has to go back and be edited. And when you consider how long it takes you to write a book, to read a book just casually, okay, you're talking about hours upon hours of work. You're talking about days or weeks of work. So there's a lot involved in that. Are you having somebody help you with that? Or are you producing it yourself? I'm just kind of curious as an audio person, how you're doing that.
Yeah, I haven't started doing the audiobook yet. It's on my list of things to start chipping away at. But yeah, I'm doing it myself. I'm a creative person, and I've been, I've been in marketing and PR for a really long time. So I like to do things myself because I have a very particular taste and style in things. But I have test run using different platforms for recording it, and saw just how challenging it is. I mean, every single sound within 15 miles was getting picked up on my mic. It was like, I would listen to it again, and I'm like, I have to redo it because you can hear a motorcycle. But it's an adventure, and I thought about having someone do it, but I'm going to record the audio version. Not trying to be like other people because that's never worked for me. I spent decades trying to do what I thought other people wanted, and so I'm going to read it, but also share anecdotes along the way that you can't find in the book itself. So.
Well, that's a great idea. Give them something different than just the words being read. That's fantastic. And I have no doubt you're going to do an excellent job just by listening to the trailer. You have this actress vibe. Have you ever done acting or ever pursued that or anything like that?
I had an agent, Abrams Artist. I had when I was first in New York, and I've done a lot of TV over the years. But I as soon as I got in front of the camera, I was like, this is not me. I'm the person on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for that. People don't realize the amount of creativity that goes in actually producing it, and writing it and directing it. And and all of these other things. And you definitely have all those skills. Where can people find you online? I know you mentioned your website and all that other good stuff. What are some of the social media platforms that you're on that you feel would be most productive to send people to?
Yeah, I love X. I have a great time. I've met so many amazing people on X, formerly known as Twitter. I like LinkedIn because I've been on there for a really long time, and I know I have a really strong network. And then I'm a huge fan of TikTok, especially I like to go live on TikTok because I get to meet so many amazing people. But those are my primary places.
All
Oh,
right.
and
Well,
yep, you know what? Before I forget, I just
sure.
started a group on Facebook called the Glow the F Up Club. So that's an open group if you guys want to go join it. I share content there and news about some of the stuff I'm doing. So yeah.
Well, I've been told that my whole life. I need to grow the F up. That's
Yeah.
still
Glow.
haven't
Yeah,
done
it's
it.
funny. It's a play on grow up, glow up,
Glow up. Right. Yeah, I got it. I need to glow up and grow up. I need to do both. All right.
Growing up is highly overrated.
It is, boy, I'm telling you, it is highly overrated. That is probably the understatement of the year. Shaman, it's always great to talk to you, and it's always great to have you as a guest co-host. Those things get lots of listens. I always get good feedback from them. You're absolutely fantastic. The book again is Memory Mansion, and here again, the pre-sales on this are already extremely good. The author, ShamanIsis. Before I let you go, just in a nutshell, what is a shaman? Is it like you said, a healer, or is it something more than that?
Well, shamanism is interesting. It's over 10,000 years old. It's been in a part, there have been shaman types in every culture basically throughout history. And what they are is they are like the community healer, the person who helps people transition at moments of need and counsel and care for the community. It's very much what, interestingly enough, the church patterned a lot of its future behaviors on. And so a lot of people think of it as something that only existed in a couple of cultures, but it's actually very ancient, and it's been around and in cultures all over the world since the beginning of humanity. So really, it's about being a healer. And something, I don't really love the word healer because people have so many misconceptions about it. A
Mhm.
healer is a person that triggers other people to grow, to evolve. They're not to help heal themselves so that people can heal themselves. They're not out there like waving magic wands over somebody. You're healed. That's like something that the church took on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like to share that because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it, and not all people who are shamans are into doing tons of ceremonial stuff, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Interesting stuff. And here again, if you find this at all intriguing, there's the book, Memory Mansion, ShamanIsis, ShamanIsis.com. There's the podcast, there's the Facebook groups. So there's lots of things that you can get more information about all these very intriguing subjects. Shaman is always very interesting, always very entertaining, always very educational. Again, Shaman, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
thank you, Billy. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to work with you and to see you. And thank you very much for having me on the show to share Memory Mansion with people.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. My name is Billy Dees. You can find me on X as well. And here again, X is formerly known as Twitter, at Billy Dees. Real easy to find. You can find the podcast just about on all the major podcasting networks. And I'm on most major media. I do TikTok. I'm not on there as much as I should be, quite frankly. But it's one of those things you can only do so many things well. But I am on there as well. So yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast today. As far as our audience goes, again, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.